The biting wind was a physical presence, clawing at Liam's exposed skin, a constant reminder of the merciless Canadian winter. Days bled into weeks, each one a stark white canvas of snow and ice, each breath a plume of vapor disappearing into the sub-zero air. He moved with the quiet grace of a predator, his seasoned eyes scanning the unbroken white, his camera a familiar weight, an extension of his will. For months, he had been a ghost in this unforgiving landscape, haunting the fringes of a whispered legend. The lone gray wolf, a phantom of the pines, a creature of myth and shadow. Today, that shadow had substance. He saw it first as a subtle disturbance against the distant snow-laden tree line. A flicker of movement, a ripple of muscle, an impossible ghost made real. The wolf. Its coat, thick and mottled gray, was a masterpiece of natural camouflage against the pale backdrop. Its movements fluid, ancient, a testament to raw, untamed power. Liam's fingers, numb despite thick gloves, found purchase on his camera, the lens an eager eye. He captured fleeting glimpses, each click a desperate attempt to distill the essence of this elusive spirit. Then, the wolf veered. It turned towards the frozen artery of the river, a wide expanse of treacherous, shimmering ice that separated Liam from his quarry, from the very wilderness he sought to understand. The wolf's steps were cautious, its paws testing the surface, each movement a delicate dance on the precipice of danger. Liam held his breath, every instinct screaming at him, a premonition colder than the air itself. There was a sound then, barely audible above the wind's mournful sigh, a low, guttural groan that vibrated through the very ground. The ice. It cracked. A spiderweb of fissures raced across the pristine surface with horrifying speed, an audible splintering that tore through the desolate silence. In an instant, the majestic creature was gone, swallowed by a gaping maw of black, frigid water. A raw, desperate howl ripped through the air, a sound of primal terror, of a powerful life abruptly snared by the indifference of nature. Liam's heart vaulted into his throat, a frantic drum against his ribs. The camera, a tool of observation, suddenly felt obscene, an irrelevant burden. It clattered forgotten to the snow as he surged forward, his legs pumping, propelled by an impulse far deeper than any photographic ambition. The wolf thrashed, a dark shape against the icy water, its powerful body fighting the paralyzing cold, its struggle a visceral battle against an impossible, icy enemy. Liam, the observer, was now something else entirely, an entity driven by a desperate, illogical need to save. The core conflict was a relentless, tightening coil, each strand pulling in a different direction. Survival, raw and immediate, dominated everything. Not just for the wolf thrashing in the icy grip of the river, its strength visibly failing, but for Liam himself. Every step he took towards that treacherous hole was a step closer to his own potential doom. He knew the ice could give way again, could swallow him whole, a human folly in a wild, unforgiving land. The inherent danger was a stark, cold reality, but it was overshadowed by a more profound, almost spiritual struggle. The conflict of interspecies trust and connection. Could he, a human, a predator in the grand tapestry of the wild, bridge that chasm of primal fear and distrust with an animal of such untamed power? Liam, the wildlife photographer, was a professional observer, a silent witness. But here, the lines blurred, then shattered. Was he meant to merely document the tragic end of this magnificent creature, or was there a deeper imperative, a human empathy that transcended the sterile ethics of observation? He often grappled with a deep sense of loneliness, a quiet companion in the vast, isolating wilderness. His solitary pursuit of wildlife photography, though fulfilling, often masked this yearning for connection. Now staring into the desperate, drowning eyes of the wolf, that loneliness felt suddenly amplified, yet also paradoxically on the verge of being broken. The rescue attempt was a direct confrontation with his own humanity, his role in this raw, natural world. He questioned everything. Was this compassion a virtue or a foolish, life-threatening flaw? Had his intervention already jeopardized him and perhaps even the wolf, by drawing it further into the human sphere? Or was this a singular, profound opportunity to open a door to a deeper understanding, a connection rarely forged between man and beast? The internal debate was a maelstrom, but the wolf's whimpering cries, growing weaker with each passing second, silenced all rational thought. Only instinct remained, save. The treachery of the ice beneath his own weight was secondary, the paralyzing cold a distant hum. All that mattered was the dark, desperate shape in the water, a life fading, a spirit on the verge of being extinguished. The decision was made not by logic, but by the relentless, pounding rhythm of his own beating heart. The turning point was not merely a physical act of rescue, but a crucible where shared vulnerability forged an improbable bond. Liam, every muscle screaming, every nerve alert to the groaning ice beneath him, inched forward. The branch, long and sturdy, felt like an extension of his own desperate will. He pushed it across the chasm of open water, towards the floundering wolf. Its eyes, wild with terror and the encroaching paralysis of hypothermia, fixed on him. A low growl rumbled in its throat, an instinctive warning, a challenge born of primal fear. It was a creature of immense power, even in its weakened state, capable of tearing him apart. Its desperate snarls, however, had dwindled to weak, pained whimpers, its movements slowing, its body succumbing to the icy grip. Liam spoke softly, words meaningless to the wolf, but perhaps the tone, the raw, pleading urgency, carried across the frigid air. "Hold on," he urged, his voice hoarse. "Please just hold on." The wolf continued to eye him, a flicker of something unreadable in its gaze. Was it distrust? Or was it the nascent spark of a desperate, dying hope? This was the moment, the precipice. The wolf could turn, could snap, could reject his lifeline. But instead, as if weighing its options against the inevitable chill of death, it made a conscious, agonizing decision. It clamped its powerful jaws around the rough wood, not with aggression, but with a surprising gentleness, a desperate grip on salvation. Their gazes locked. In that silent, profound moment, Liam saw not just an animal, but a sentient being, raw intelligence burning in those amber eyes, a flicker of desperate hope against the gathering shadows. It was an unspoken conversation, a profound acknowledgement of a bond suddenly, impossibly forged. Liam braced himself, muscles straining, his feet scrambling for purchase on the slick ice. He pulled, every sinew protesting, every ounce of his being focused on the heavy, soaked weight at the end of the branch. The wolf, with a last surge of its own waning strength, kicked its hind legs, scrambling, claws scraping against the ice, helping to drag its waterlogged body towards safety. Finally, with a tremendous heave, it was done. The wolf, dripping and shivering violently, lay sprawled on the solid ice, its breath coming in ragged gasps. For a long minute it did not move, seemingly too exhausted to flee. Then, slowly, with an effort that bespoke its immense internal struggle, it lifted its head. Its eyes, intelligent and ancient, met Liam's once more. This was no fleeting glance, no casual observation. This was a deep, unwavering stare, a silent, powerful acknowledgement of a profound act, a life given back. There was gratitude there, unmistakable and raw, yet also the fierce, untamed spirit of the wild. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the moment was over. The wolf, with a strength Liam could not comprehend, pushed itself to its feet. It cast one last, lingering look at him, a silent farewell, a promise of a truth he couldn't yet grasp. Then, with a fluid grace that belied its recent ordeal, it vanished into the snow-laden pines, leaving Liam profoundly shaken, utterly changed, and shivering from more than just the cold. The aftermath was a slow, creeping chill, both physical and existential. Liam returned to his cabin, the adrenaline draining away, leaving him hollowed out and trembling. He battled hypothermia, his teeth chattering uncontrollably as he shed his soaked layers, desperately coaxing warmth back into his aching limbs. But far more profound than the cold was the haunting image of the wolf's eyes, burned into his memory, and the raw, visceral shock of the rescue itself. Sleep offered no escape. The image of the cracking ice, the desperate howl, the silent, shared gaze, played on an endless loop in his mind. He reviewed his camera footage, not for composition or light, but for answers, for any explanation of the profound empathy that had overridden all his training, all his self-preservation. The wolf was a blur, a frantic struggle, but in his mind's eye he saw every detail, every muscle twitch, every desperate gasp. He questioned his own sanity, the sudden, overwhelming urge to intervene. The brief, intense connection with the wild creature had, paradoxically, amplified his sense of isolation. The vastness of the wilderness, once a comforting solitude, now felt strangely emptier, tinged with a longing for that unspoken link. Days bled into a week, then another. Liam became consumed by thoughts of the wolf. He patrolled the surrounding areas, not with his camera ready for a shot, but with a desperate, unspoken hope. He searched for signs of its recovery. Fresh tracks in the snow, a discarded piece of fur snagged on a branch, the faint echo of a distant howl carried on the wind. He left out no food, respecting the unyielding laws of the wild, understanding that human provision could easily undo the wolf's innate wildness. Yet, almost unconsciously, he tied a bright crimson scarf, a splash of human color, to a low-hanging branch near the edge of his property. It was a silent offering, a recognizable marker of his continued presence, a fragile signal of goodwill in a world that rarely acknowledged such things. The ethical dilemma gnawed at him. He was a wildlife photographer, an observer, a chronicler of nature's untouched beauty. His role was to document, not to interfere. Had he crossed an unforgivable boundary? Had his act of compassion, however pure, tainted the very wildness he revered? Or had it, as a quiet voice within him suggested, opened his eyes to a deeper, more interconnected truth about nature and his place within it? His loneliness, once a quiet companion, now felt heavier, tinged with a longing for that raw, unspoken connection he had shared in the icy grip of near death. The world, once viewed through a lens, now felt more immediate, more deeply personal. Then came the subtle, unsettling acknowledgments, the first hint of reciprocity. He found a partially eaten caribou carcass, left surprisingly close to his cabin, not a direct offering, but a suggestion of proximity, a gentle reminder. A fresh set of wolf tracks, impossibly large and distinct, circled his dwelling one morning, almost as if observing him, a silent patrol. He would catch glimpses of movement in the distant tree line, a fleeting shadow gone before he could truly confirm. These were not outright gifts, no definitive proof, but they were enough. They were a nascent awareness, building anticipation, a quiet drumbeat leading to the full, shocking act of gratitude he intuitively knew was coming. The waiting was agony, a test of faith in the unseen, the unspoken. Weeks passed, turning the winter landscape into a canvas of deepening snow and increasing savagery. Liam had found the rabbit on his porch, a pristine, freshly caught offering, shocking confirmation of the wolf's return, its impossible gift. He had stared at it for a long time, the weight of that unspoken gratitude pressing down on him, deepening his conviction that their bond was real, a fragile thread woven into the fabric of the wild. But the Canadian wilderness was not done with its trials. A particularly brutal blizzard swept through the region, a whiteout that swallowed horizons and choked the air with ice. Liam, already weakened by a severe flu, found himself trapped in his cabin, supplies dwindling, his body aching with a fever that stole his strength. The extreme conditions, however, offered a perverse opportunity for others. He discovered it first in the memory card of one of his remote camera traps, a grainy, time-stamped image of 3 figures, heavily cloaked, carrying rifles, their faces obscured by balaclavas. Illegal trappers or poachers, emboldened by the severe weather, believing themselves unseen, encroaching deep into the wolf's territory. His fever-addled brain struggled to process the threat, but his core, his deep-seated connection to this land, screamed in protest. The following morning, despite his weakness, he forced himself out, drawn by an unsettling silence. There it was, a freshly laid snare, cruelly crafted, disguised beneath a dusting of new snow. His heart plummeted. This wasn't just about the wolf anymore. This was about the entire fragile ecosystem, about the balance he had come to understand and cherish. Driven by a surge of furious determination that momentarily eclipsed his illness, Liam felt compelled to act. He confronted them, his voice hoarse, his body shivering not just from cold, but from sheer defiance. He stumbled upon their makeshift camp, the air thick with the smell of wood smoke and a primitive, menacing threat. 3 men, hardened by the wilderness, their faces now clearly visible, eyes narrowed with suspicion and aggression. Words were exchanged, harsh and guttural. Liam, weakened and alone, found himself in grave danger, outnumbered and outgunned. The poachers advanced, their movements slow, deliberate, a chilling certainty in their eyes. He stood his ground, a fragile, defiant human against the looming threat. Then the blizzard intensified. A sudden, violent gust of wind whipped through the clearing, swirling snow into a blinding vortex. From the heart of that swirling white chaos, a shadow detached itself. The gray wolf. But it was not alone. Behind it, emerging like specters from the storm, were others. A pack. 4, 5, then 6 powerful forms, their eyes gleaming, their breath pluming in the frigid air. They did not attack. They did not snarl. They simply appeared, a formidable silent presence fanning out, encircling the poachers with an unspoken, chilling authority. The lead wolf, his wolf, stepped forward, its intelligent eyes meeting Liam's across the clearing. A clear message of protection, of defiance, burning in their amber depths. The poachers, hardened as they were, faltered. The sudden, overwhelming display of raw, wild power, the silent, watchful gaze of the pack, was more terrifying than any direct assault. It was a force of nature, an ancient, untamed power they could not comprehend or control. The wolf pack, a living wall of muscle and instinct, created an undeniable diversion, a primal fear that gnawed at the edges of the poachers' bravado. They hesitated, then slowly, reluctantly began to retreat, their purpose shattered, their arrogance broken by the silent fury of the wild. The snow swirled, obscuring them as they vanished into the blizzard, leaving Liam alone with his protectors. The incident with the poachers and the wolf's active, undeniable intervention left an indelible mark on Liam. It was a climax not of violence, but of profound, active reciprocity, a testament to a connection that transcended the boundaries of species. Liam did not domesticate the wolf, nor did it ever become a pet. That was not the nature of their bond. Instead, their relationship matured, deepening into a silent, enduring understanding and a mutual respect that defined his very existence in the wilderness. He continued his work as a wildlife photographer, but his lens now captured more than just images. It sought to convey the spirit, the interconnectedness, the profound, pulsating heart of the wild. He became a passionate, informed advocate for the preservation of this fragile ecosystem, his voice carrying the weight of his personal experience, of the life he had saved and the life that had, in turn, saved him. He spoke of the intelligence, the raw power, and the surprising capacity for empathy he had witnessed in the heart of the wilderness. The wolf remained wild, a powerful, elusive symbol of the untouched world. Yet, its periodic, fleeting appearances near Liam's cabin served as poignant reaffirmations of their unique, unspoken pact. A distant howl carried on the wind, distinct from any other. A fleeting glimpse of a gray form through the trees, a pair of amber eyes watching from the shadows before vanishing. These were not casual encounters. They were deliberate, silent communications, threads of connection in the vast tapestry of the wild. Liam found a profound sense of belonging, a deep, abiding peace that had eluded him for so long. He understood now that true connection didn't require words, that the greatest gifts were often those given without expectation, from the very heart of the wild. He was no longer merely an observer, nor was he an intervener in the conventional sense. He was a guardian, a witness, a part of the greater whole. The loneliness that had once defined him was replaced by a quiet, powerful understanding. He was never truly alone in this wilderness. He was bound, in the most profound way imaginable, to its wild, beating heart.